you, Missy. Angela Brackbill is the Stormwater Program Manager for the City of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. She is a graduate of Pennsylvania State University, holding a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, specializing in environmental engineering. Angela began her career with the City of Lancaster as the Water Resources Engineer, supporting the development, implementation, and maintenance of processes to ensure continued compliance and advancement of the city's green infrastructure program. In her current position, she is responsible for providing overall coordination and oversight of the city's Bureau of Stormwater Management, including managing the city's nationally recognized green infrastructure program. And when she is not working, Angela enjoys gardening, kayaking, and hiking with her dogs. Me too, Angela. So with that, Angela, go ahead and take it away and you can switch over to your screen.
Oh, you all disappeared. Give me 1 second here. I apologize.
No problem. I think your screen is loading. I can see your screen. Missy, does it look good on your end?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. That was awesome. So, as Michelle mentioned, I'm here today to talk about where clean water meets community, and I'm going to showcase our BUBBA winning innovation at the Wetlands at Longs Park. So just a little bit of background on the City of Lancaster. We are located in Pennsylvania, and we are about a 90-minute drive west of Philadelphia. The City of Lancaster is a combined sewer system community. So we have a combined sewer system as well as an MS4 system in the annex areas of our city. And the entirety of our city is located in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. As a city, we've been implementing a very comprehensive green infrastructure program for over 14 years now. That kind of kicked off in 2011. We adopted a green infrastructure plan, and then we did have an update to that plan in 2019. Since its fruition, about 2010, we have identified over 200 potential green infrastructure projects in the city, both public and private, and constructed more than 80 of those projects on private and public property throughout the city. Just a little background on this project. So Longs Park is located in the northwest corner of the city of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It is in those annexed MS4 areas of the city. The entirety of the park is tributary to the Little Conestoga Creek. The Little Conestoga Creek is tributary to the Conestoga River, which is ultimately tributary to the Chesapeake Bay. This Little Conestoga Creek is listed as impaired for pathogens, but Longs Park itself is one of our most popular parks in the city. It's over 80 acres, and it is owned and operated and maintained by the City of Lancaster. This park hosts a ton of activities every year, especially in the summer, warmer months of the year, including art, music, and food festivals, and many, many other events. Public use features of the park include a petting zoo, pavilions, many athletic fields, and kind of the crown jewel of the park is a 3-acre Longs Pond, which can be seen here on your screen. Longs Pond has long suffered long-term water quality controls. With the pond, it's more algae-based and algae blooms that we've had issues with. So part of the implementation of this project did deal with the pond here, and I'll get to that in just a second. So as I mentioned, the main project goal of this project was to improve that pond, improve the water quality, and reduce the algae in that pond by not only just treating the nutrients, but also increasing the flushing to the pond itself. With that, and our MS4 permit, we were also required to meet or exceed regulatory requirements of the city's Chesapeake Bay Pollutant Reduction Plan. So this was a plan that we had to meet. We reference it as the CBPRP. And that plan did require this area of the city, so that Little Conestoga Creek watershed area, it required us to install methods or means to reduce about 10% reduction in total suspended solids in that watershed. Other goals of this project, of course, being a municipality, was leveraging multiple funding sources such as grants, which I will dive into in a bit. And then, of course, designing with maintenance in mind. As I mentioned earlier, we own, operate, and maintain this park, so maintenance was a very big and key piece of this project. Many considerations went into this project. First and foremost, being such a popular park, We had to make sure that it was a public amenity to the park and that it was complementary to Long's Park's, not only its aesthetic, its use, but also its users' experience. Other considerations was park space. It's a very popular park. It's very heavily used. So we had to be mindful of the footprint of this facility. We couldn't take up too much space in the park for this facility. Long's Park is also known for its big, large canopy trees, large oaks in particular. So by installing this facility, we had to make sure that we were protecting those existing trees and that existing canopy versus installing stormwater and removing such. As I mentioned earlier, part of the treatment of the system to the pond itself was increased water to the system. So we had to make sure that it performed during large storm events. Longs Park doesn't flood now, so by introducing additional flows to the pond, we didn't want to create a flooding situation that doesn't exist now. And then again, of course, design considerations back to that maintenance and cost. So Long's Park wetlands are constructed wetlands and they're considered a treatment system or like a natural treatment system, which is essentially an engineered ecosystem that uses like both natural, biological, physical, and chemical processes to improve water quality. So in other words, solids are removed through like settling, phosphorus is removed through like biological uptake and settling, and then nitrate is removed through denitrification. I can use my laser here, see if I can figure this out. Hopefully you can see that. So just like as a briefer for this project, you'll be able to see Long's Pond here on the right side of your screen. So essentially water is pumped from Long's Pond through conveyance to the system. The water enters the system through what we call an inflow or like a cascade structure. It then enters about a 0.1 acre forebay that includes floating wetland islands, an iron enhanced media filter, which is about 0.1 acres, an upper marsh, and then a lower marsh, which are about both 0.2 acres. And then that treated water is then conveyed back down into Long's Pond. So it's really pumped up through the natural treatment system and treated, and then that clean water heads back down to the pond. So drainage areas were pretty key, obviously, with this design. It really does have two inflow sources, right? So I alluded to a pump station previously. So stormwater runoff is received from Route 30, but then water is also pumped from Longs Park. So about 7.7 acres of contributing drainage area from State Route 30, which is, sorry, this area up here, enters the system, and then that continuously pumped water at a flow rate of about 25 gallons per minute is pumped from Long's Pond to the system. This system treats about 44,000 gallons per day, which equates to about the use of 150 American households per day. So to dive into the pieces a little bit, so the first system that the water enters is that 0.1 acre forebay with floating wetland islands. So this receives that pond water via that cascade inlet structure that I mentioned, and then also that runoff water from State Route 30 via an outflow or an outfall that flows through a vegetated swale into the forebay. This forebay really allows the pollutants and it acts as a water filter to let everything kind of filter and settle out. That first line of defense for the treatment system. Floating wetland islands were also installed, and they help slow the movement of the water and then also remove nutrients via that suspended root mass. Water then overflows from that forebay into an iron enhanced media filter. So this filter is really for promoting phosphorus removal through iron oxidation. So it receives that overflow from the forebay, and then iron filings in that media rust, right? And that forms iron oxides that bonds phosphate. So it traps that phosphate in the media filter itself. The system obviously also helps reduce nitrogen, sediment, and metals. This system is a bit more complicated, so I thought I'd touch a little bit on the filter operation. So essentially, water vertically, it enters the media filter and then it vertically flows through the bed, which consists of that gravel filings, about 3% by weight, and gravel. So it's a mix of filings and gravel, and that promotes that phosphate removal. We did notice early on in design that, for this system to work properly and not become anaerobic, it really needed to be cycled through. So we did install an actuated valve cycle, which is closed for 48 hours and opens for 3 hours, which essentially lets this system drain down completely every 2 or 3 days. Water then flows into the upper and the lower marsh areas of the wetland. And it receives that outflow from the media filter, but it also acts as it provides further removal of like sediments and nutrients, but it also acts and helps to reduce any residual iron from that media filter that makes its way into the lower portion of the wetlands. This upper and lower marsh includes both deep and shallow zones, and that helps with, enhanced solids retention, denitrification, phosphorus uptake, of course, and then also provides a lot of ecological habitat, as well as like natural mosquito control. Obviously, being a wetland, this entailed quite a bit of planting. So this plan had a massive planting plan. Approximately 10,000 plugs were planted in this system, about 250 to 300 shrubs, and a little over 300 aquatic deep pool plantings. I did kind of break down the planting plan on the left of your screen. So it did include the installation of trees and like I mentioned, shrubs as well. But we did use a seed mix in the upland areas and a seed mix mixed with plugs in those wetland areas, like the side slopes to the basins, if you'd call them that. The emergent marsh water zones, so those kind of deep and shallow zones, were all plugs, as well as the sand filter and the floating wetland islands. So what does the system do, right? So we originally modeled this system for, an analysis and for benefits, and it was designed to provide attention up to the 100-year, 24-hour storm. But really, the water quality that we showed through our modeling provided a reduction of about 20 pounds of total phosphorus, 100 pounds of total nitrogen, and about 12,000 pounds of total suspended solids per year. Those numbers there exceeded by far our Chesapeake Bay pollutant reduction plan requirements. And ultimately for TP, it was about a 50% reduction, TN a 32% reduction, and a huge reduction of about 95% for TSS for this small watershed. Construction occurred in 2023. It started in 2023 and took about 6 months to complete. So construction was also finished in 2023, and I added some photos of construction during construction here, and of course some of our guest visitors during this construction. And then, as I mentioned, it was completed in 2023. I really like this slide. I think it really shows there on the top left of your screen what this area of this park was previously. It was really just a grass field that sometimes acted as overflow parking, but you can see on the right-hand side of your screen really what it had became. So everyone always asks, what about cost? So the estimated construction cost for this project was about 1.95 million, and that was after value engineering based on preliminary design. The original design came in at about 3 million, but we took that value engineering and really got it down a bit. That did require the elimination of a second pump station and a second boardwalk over the upper marsh and some reduced grading and whatnot, but really it really brought it back down to a more feasible cost for the city. Ironically, then actual construction costs came in a bit lower than what we had planned on. It came in about 1.8 million. And of that 1.8 million, we did receive about 515,000 in grants. The PADEP's Growing Greener program, the Lancaster Clean Water Partners, PA Fish and Boat Commission, and the Susquehanna River Basin Commission definitely provide some funding for this project and a lot of assistance that was needed. So back to the public amenities. So it includes a lot of public amenities in this area, but just to touch on a few, we did include on the bottom left of your screen here, a pedestrian bridge over that inflow vegetated swale. That's the swale where the water enters the system from State Route 30. We also included a boardwalk with platforms and benches, which are kind of opposite on the page here, and then a lot of educational signage, which I can talk about here in a second. So with the educational signage that was also grant funded, we developed the signage in collaboration with both our Public Works Department and the Department of Neighborhood Engagement. We really wanted this signage to be and intended to be and engage technical and non-technical audiences. So of course, then that meant we had to focus on accessibility, the use of plain language, right? Anyone at an 8th grade level or older should be able to easily understand and read this information. And then we also worked very diligently with our Department of Neighborhood Engagement to ensure that we had translations in Spanish, Swahili, French, as well as ASL. So I'll go ahead and see if I can click on this link here, if it'll let me. Not letting me, there we go. So as you can see here, we do have this up on our city website, and it is in English shown, but it's easily accessible. You can click on different languages and it will show you all of the information in different languages. And then the coolest part, I think, and it was the first time the city ever worked with an interpreter for American Sign Language, and I think it turned out fantastic. So I'm going to take a minute to share this with you. We did do a video on Longs Park, which I can share now.
We have really impressive stormwater program to help reduce combined sewer overflows in the city of Lancaster. The city, I think, like many other cities across America, we thought we were doing some really important work back 100+ years ago by creating a combined sewer system, combining storm systems with our wastewater system. During moderate to intense rainfall events, there are discharges of untreated wastewater into the Conestoga River. This is something that cannot be fixed overnight. Right now we are in Longs Park, across from Park City and along Route 30. So this is nearly an acre of new constructed wetlands.
Early on, we thought, how do we clean up Long's Pond? We knew there was a water quality problem in there for years, and the idea of a stormwater treatment wetland came into play, and we thought, this corner of the park would make a lot of sense.
There's a series of 4 different facilities that flow into one another. It's a sediment forebay, and that really does a bulk of dropping out sediments in some of our larger pieces that might be suspended in the water.
Water will then flow from the forebay into this iron enhanced media filter. The idea of the iron filings is to help remove phosphorus from the water. Once water flows through this and filters through this, it goes into a series of 2 kind of traditional wetland marshes. And then at the end of that, there's a pipe that will discharge the water back into Long's Pond. So it's a whole treatment tree.
That's really important for that nutrient removal through biochemical processes. There needs to be anaerobic conditions, so conditions without oxygen, and then aerobic conditions with oxygen for these microorganisms to do the nutrient removal that's necessary. We're hoping to lessen the manufactured treatments by these more natural treatments. We're seeing a lot of habitat that's been created, a lot of biodiversity, a lot of really high functioning stormwater practices that are occurring here. When we are paving over this, when we are compacting it with lawnmowers, when we are tilling it, all of these activities just accelerate the rate in which that stormwater runoff reaches our streams. If it were to rain in this beautiful Longs Park today, a lot of that will saturate into the ground, and it might take months or even years to reach the Little Conestoga and the Conestoga River. That is how our streams stay healthy today. One of the ways in which I think that Lancaster and many other cities and municipalities are working to better serve our communities is by cleaning the water and working with a variety of different stakeholders to do that.
Oops, sorry. So yes, that educational signage, I'm proud of that, and that turned out fantastic in my opinion. So to keep moving forward, then I guess, as I alluded to earlier, a big part of this project was the operation and maintenance. We had to keep operation and maintenance in mind. Like I said, it's a city operated and maintained park, so we had to acknowledge that early on in the system. So we worked very close with our consultants, and we did create a very detailed long-term O&M manual, which provides recommendations across the board, everything from water flow and water level management to media filter operations, landscape management, invasive species management, wildlife management and vector control, and then of course our seasonal operations as well. With that, and a little bit later in the game, we also decided that we need to have a water quality monitoring plan for this project. We really wanted to be able to quantify what benefit was happening with the wetlands. So we did recently contract with a company that will conduct, via grab samples at several locations along the treatment train, quarterly sampling events. So lucky enough for this presentation, we did receive our results from our first sample, which occurred back in January of this year. So I have on my screen here, I'm kind of showing the details of that, but it was very cold. The water was cold, so it was only 37 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not a water quality expert, but from what I've been told, as the water gets warmer, we will even get more data from this. But from this sampling event, we did see about an 80% reduction in total nitrogen. On the top right of your screen here, you can see the influent water, which is entering the system at that cascade structure. And then as the nitrogen levels decrease as the water makes its way through the treatment system. Ironically, total phosphorus was a non-detect across the system, including the influent and outfluent, or discharge, I mean. We even did go back and test the phosphorus again with low level detection limits, and it was still non-detect. That said, as things warm up, like I mentioned, I'm expecting to see that phosphorus through the system through the summer months. We also saw here on the bottom, you can see kind of the TSS reduction at the bottom of your screen here with the influent forebay and all the way to the discharge. You can really see that the forebay is really reducing the most sediment in the system. You see that sharp drop here. Ironically, the filter discharge was actually a little higher temperature than what we saw throughout the rest of the system. And we're thinking that maybe due to the media mixing and buffering, up and down in that system from day to day. So we're expecting some temperature swings there, but we're thinking that may be favorable to denitrification to a slight degree, but more to come on that as we keep moving ahead with water quality sampling. And then algae, we are testing for algae as well. We didn't see very much with these cold temperatures, but I'm excited to see, what we get out of that and the reduction in algae we see as the algae starts growing later in the year. I just wanted to touch quickly on project insights and some lessons learned. There were quite a bit of them with this project. It was a very successful project, but like any other project across the city, and I'm sure elsewhere across the region, there's always lessons to be learned from every project. So in terms of like site and logistics, it was a pretty heavy list in that area. With all the scheduled park events, and all the activities that happen throughout the park, we did really have to coordinate and schedule accordingly depending on those events, which was the lift, but we got through it. And then again, back to those memorial trees and mature trees on site. As you can see up here, we really wanted to make sure we protected them during construction, didn't need to remove trees, to install stormwater management. You can kind of see in this general area, we did a pretty good job with that. I believe only 2 trees were removed with this project and they were placed in double. Other issues that kind of came up in lessons learned was material submittals. So originally our iron enhanced media filter called out or specified that we were supposed to have an iron enhanced sand filter. But working with our contractor and many distributors across the region, we couldn't get our hands on that correct weight or percentage of iron filings with the sand. So we ended up going with an iron enhanced gravel filter, which I think has turned out to be just as successful. But again, more to come on that once we get our water quality for phosphorus. A couple other items, we did have a couple startup nuisances. Right after we got the system online, we did have quite a bit of algae growth post-construction, but as the system has aged, we have seen a decrease in that. I think due to the vegetation having a chance to, grow up and fill in and providing that water quality benefit. But again, I think in the summer, we'll see more results in that with water quality monitoring. And then adjusting water levels during establishment. I think we've got that figured out now, but originally it was a little complicated, making sure that the plants that needed to be wet were wet, and the plants that needed to be somewhat dry had those times in between until they really found their rhythm. Otherwise, we did a couple other quick things. We had some aesthetics and access of the pump control, which can be shown up here. This is the pump station that's right next to the pond. We actually had to have a custom ordered stainless steel front put on that just to protect the system from folks being able to push buttons and turn them on and turn them off. The original system came with a solid door, but we needed to be able to see, if any whistles or beeps or alerts went off. So we had that custom ordered to put in that see-through sleeve. Otherwise, one of the more interesting and I think somewhat comical issues we had was with an intake float. So this is the float that's located in the pond itself. So the contractors received that and it actually came out of Texas. So it wasn't a float that was necessarily acceptable or I don't know if acceptable is the correct word, available for cold region climate. So in other words, if the pond was completely froze over, there was a possibility that the float would kind of crush on ice or ice load. Luckily enough, we do have an aerator kind of in this general area of the pond. So we haven't seen a complete freeze over of the pond in that general area yet, but we are alert and ready to take action if that occurs. Invasive species management is always a lesson learned with this. We do have an issue with cattails in this facility. We have and are contracting with some folks to help us with management of cattails because they are just so quick to take over. But in the interim, I think we're doing a pretty good job. And then finally, I think koi fish, again, with invasive species management. I'm not sure how they got there, but they did. So we're actually now speaking with the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat or the Game Commission with discussions on how we can alleviate this koi fish issue. I don't know if you're aware or not, but they are considered like an invasive species in Pennsylvania. Finally, I just wanted to show some images of the wildlife we've seen at the wetlands. We've seen an explosion of wildlife, anything from many, many monarch butterflies to dragonflies to, those eastern turtles, ducks. First time I've ever seen a blue herring in my life was out in this area. So ecologically, I think the wetland is doing a fantastic job as well. One of the questions that does come up a lot that we see is about mosquitoes. Like, do we get complaints about mosquitoes? And I think partially that reason is because there's just simply so many dragonflies. There's so many flowers and so many dragonflies that we haven't had an issue with mosquito populations yet. So all in all, ecologically, this project, in my opinion, was a huge success. I think that's all I have today. I just wanted to show off some of our achievements here. Longs Park did make it into the Wet Magazine. Obviously, as Michelle alluded to earlier, we are a 2025 BUBBAs Grand Prize winner. We also received the Diamond Award for Water Resources and the Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence in 2025. So this project has been huge in success, and I think it's a fantastic project to show off. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Angela. I put the link in the chat for folks to check out the BUBBAs page. And you can click through and see the different projects from all the different years. But Angela's project did win the overall grand prize, or the City of Lancaster's, I should say, big part being Angela's participation, did win the overall grand prize for the BUBBAs, which was voted on by over 1,000 people. It's voted on by a public vote. So we have a couple questions in the Q&A. I'm going to get us started with the Q&A with a question that I have, but if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A box. You can also use the chat at this point if you would like, but Q&A helps us a little bit. So Angela, I would love to hear how you all, as you were designing and implementing this project, how did you balance the technical stormwater treatment goals with creating a space that the public can interact with? And did those priorities ever come into conflict?
I think there's always conflict in projects like this, but no, we worked very closely. I think I don't know if I mentioned, but I am part of the DPWs, the Department of Public Works with the city. So the Department of Public Works worked very closely with our Parks Division on this project to ensure that those conflicts were minimized to the maximum possible. We also worked very closely with the Longs Park Commission, so we were aware of events and scheduling and really got a feel for how that area of the park kind of worked and what it was used for. And truly, I think it was like an underutilized part of the park. So it was kind of the perfect fit, honestly, in this area. And I think it turned out fantastic and it really added to the park itself.
Great. A couple maintenance points or logistical points that some folks put into the Q&A. I can't remember if you addressed this. Did you or have you or do you plan to have to add additional iron fillings over time?
Yes, the answer yes. We do plan to do that over time. I believe I'd have to look back at our O&M manual, but it's tentatively scheduled for about between 10 and 20 years. And that is also part of the reason that we're doing some of this water quality monitoring so we can get an idea of what the phosphorus is like when it leaves the iron enhanced media filter, right? So if we're seeing reduction in phosphorus, we know it's still doing what it's supposed to be doing. There's still enough room, in the iron to absorb that phosphorus. But once we start seeing, spikes after the media filter of phosphorus, we should know it's about time to replace that media. I will mention too, it was kind of a lesson learned for me. I was at a conference, I believe it was last year, and I ran into a gentleman brilliant when it comes to wetlands, more than I could ever imagine knowing. And in the iron enhanced media filter, we actually originally had planted that. I don't know if anyone noticed on that slide, but we originally had installed plugs in that media filter more than once. They never took. We thought it maybe had something to do with that 48 hours to 72 hours of, drain in, drain down time. But ironically, after talking to this gentleman, I learned that around the country, that's kind of how they use it as a cue. Once you start seeing plants kind of come into that media filter, you know that it's a soon time to replace it, right? Because I don't know the physics or the chemistry behind it, but I guess plants don't care for the iron as much. So as that iron's depleted, the plants start coming in. So it was kind of like one of those light bulbs. No wonder nothing will grow in there. But yeah, so we're keeping our eye on it. But yeah, as I mentioned, I believe it's between 10 and 20 years when we're expecting replacement.
Great. Yeah, that's really interesting about the plants. What is the stormwater fee for City of Lancaster residents?
The stormwater fee.
Yes, that is the question.
So
Do you have a stormwater fee
we
or a
do we do have a stormwater management fee in the city of Lancaster, and that is based off impervious surface, and how much impervious surface is on each individual parcel in the city. And then that impervious surface is broken into different tiers, and then different fees are affiliated with different tiers. So unfortunately, I don't have an exact number for you right now, but if you want to shoot me an email, I can provide as much information on that as you like or need.
Another question we had was about the brutal winter that we had this past year. Any sense of how the system fared through the winter season?
It seems to be doing its thing and doing absolutely fine. I'm excited to see how much vegetation we get this year. I didn't dive into the details of it, but all these system components, each one of the ponds or basins, whatever you'd like to call them, the marshes, um, actually have their own, it's called an aqua drain. So it's a drain that allows you to kind of raise and lower manually the level of the water. So right now, I'm hoping this might be the last winter. We're actually raising the water level for the winter to bring it up to help provide more protection for the plants, like the aquatic plants that are under, in the water so they don't freeze and their roots don't freeze. But the last few years, we haven't had any issues. I've been out a couple of times now and it's looking great. So I'm happy to follow up, but I'm excited. I don't have concerns right now. All the plants get bigger and better every year. And I think this one's going to this spring will be a showstopper.
Nice, exciting. What type of permitting was required, or would you like to talk a little bit about the permit process side
So
of
this,
things?
yeah, sure. This required first and foremost an NPDES permit. So we worked through that as well. And then I believe, I can't remember what is it a GP5 permit that's used for stream? We did have to do some work within the pond itself, right? So we had to have the intake, the pump station was at the edge of the pond, but then we did have to have the intake float and the discharge within the pond, which required we did construct like a small coffer dam in the pond area. So that did require some permitting as well, but all said and done, it wasn't a huge heavy lift. I thought it went smoothly and great, and I can't complain. I mean, the DEP and the district worked well with us on everything, so went well.
Um, what have you learned so far about how the different treatment components perform together as a system?
What have I learned so far? I mean, I definitely think that we've noticed the forebay takes the heavy hit of sediment, which I mean, you can automatically kind of assume reductions in phosphorus and nitrogen when you pull out sediment, right? So the forebay definitely does that first like kind of punch of water quality treatment. And I think that that's probably going to end up being the pond that we give the most attention to.
Mm,
But then I think we'll see a lot more with how the system's working when we get more results from the water quality monitoring. All in all, I think as an entire system, it's doing great. The first year we installed it, I kind of mentioned about algae, but we have seen, I mean, it's been a couple of years now, we're seeing a reduction in algae in Long's Pond. We actually treat Long's Pond still with like a blue dye. It's not a chemical treatment, it's like a dye treatment to
mm.
reduce the algae in the pond. But I'm hoping now that the plants are really, I mean, we'll see this year, but now that they're really filling in, they'll really, because the plants are providing like most of the water quality treatment, right? Once they're really filling in, I think is when we'll start really seeing a reduction in algae in the pond and, increased water quality. And I'm hoping eventually we can stop with the blue dye in the pond, but more to come on that. Happy to chat again next year when we have more results.
Yeah, that would be cool to do a follow-up.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Which public engagement strategies did you find were most effective in helping the community understand and support the project?
I would definitely say we've had a fantastic time with the educational signage that we've installed.
Hmm.
Originally we did hit a couple little hiccups, translations, and especially the American Sign Language video it took a lot more time and effort than we originally anticipated just
Mm,
to get it right, to make sure it was right. And then obviously uploading it to the website, getting the video done. Um, but I really think even like so we originally installed the welcome to the wetland signs, which provided like an overview of the wetlands. But then we installed basically a sign for each system and then signage on the boardwalk to talk about, like wildlife and vegetation. And it's just been I think a huge success. Like the day after we, installed the remaining signage after the overview signage, I got a couple texts that day, like you should see all the people out here reading this. Like people
oh,
want to
great.
learn more. So,
Yes.
I mean, I think it was huge. I need to bug our website, gentlemen, with our city crew just to see how many hits we've gotten on the website. That's one piece that's kind of outstanding that I'd like to see, but I feel like that gets visited a lot too.
Signage is so
It
important.
is. And we did work really closely so Jacobs Engineering, Jacobs did the design. And we worked really closely with them as well as our Dunn team to make sure that engineering is hard to explain, but we wanted to make sure that we got it right. So
Did Jacobs also do those really visually nice graphics that you see on
yes,
the signage? Yeah, they did
Jacobs
a great
did.
job.
Yep, they did the graphics as well. I will give our intern, Maria, she did on all of our wildlife and like vegetation photos for our boardwalk signage. She actually took all those pictures and she did fantastic. So
Oh, yes,
here's
definitely.
her credit, and I did credit her on the signage as well.
Amazing. What early decisions or partnerships were most important for getting a project like this started in a municipal setting?
I would say just getting in a municipal setting, it was really getting everybody on the DPW team on board.
Hmm.
It's just it's a lot of collaboration and a lot of work together and a lot of thoughts pertaining to like future maintenance. So that was, I think, one of our biggest
Hmm.
steps, right? Getting everybody from Stormwater and, the parks team and, the Department of Neighborhood Engagement, getting all of us on the same page to understand how to proceed with the project. And then as well as bringing the Lawrence Park Commission in to make sure they understood and were aware and on board with the project too. They were the biggest pieces, I think. But once everybody was there, it was smooth sailing, honestly.
You mentioned also this was a relatively early project to utilize floating wetlands as a BMP. I know a lot of people are really interested in seeing more projects with floating constructed wetlands. Did you run into any challenges in getting the design approved or in the funding with the fact that this is just something you don't see as often?
Uh, Not at all. I think it went through really smoothly. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't believe that the actual like floating wetland island was paid for via grants, but all the plantings in the islands were paid for via grants. I think it was actually the PA Fish and Boat Commission. But they went in, in terms of funding, I don't think we had any issues. The one thing that we did run into during construction was the anchoring of
Mm,
the wetlands, right? So they're located in the forebay that gets that first punch of runoff from the intake of the pond, as well as Route 30. So like on really heavy rain events with the anchoring, we wanted to make sure we didn't get like this, where they're twisting and turning
hmm
in the pond. So that was a little bit of a tripping hazard, but once we got through that, I think that went well as well.
Nice. Missy put in the chat a good sort of like educational engagement idea. I was wondering if you have looked into this at all as any kind of iNaturalist public facing project or page that people can be engaging with iNaturalist and engaging with the wetland at the same time, recording the species that they see.
That is a great idea, and I'm definitely going to take that one back. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome, especially as we're going into spring and summer.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Um, if you were starting this project today, what would you do differently?
Ooh, good question. What would I do differently? I'm not sure off the top of my head. I can't think of anything. This was actually the first project that I managed for the City of Lancaster on my own, and it went freakishly well. I thought. I haven't been so lucky with future projects, but this one was also located in a park where not that we don't do park projects, but a larger park where a lot of our green infrastructure is on streets and in right of ways where you have, all kinds of unknown utilities that you find during the process. So I can't think off the top of my head of anything that I would change per se. I'm not sure. That's a great question. I may have to circle
Well,
back on that.
yeah, if it pops into your head
Yeah,
in the next couple minutes, feel free. Sort
sure.
of relatedly, though, and it's okay if you also don't have this off the top of your head. What was one major lesson learned? I know you shared some of them, but was there one that really stood out that you would share specifically with other municipalities looking to implement similar projects in high vis areas?
Educational signage really early on in the process.
Mm,
It did take us It took us quite a bit. Like our most recent final round of educational signage just got installed like this past
mm,
fall, winter timeframe. And the project's already been in for a little while. So I'd have loved to have that out sooner. But that
mhm,
said, educational signage is expensive and we had to go after funding to get that, in and rolling. So, and of course, funding takes a little bit of time. I think we nailed it. We got what we needed, but everything takes time. If I could go back, I guess to answer that second question, that would probably be I probably would have went after funding for signage sooner in the process.
mhm.
Um, just because I think it's been so great and informative and people seem to really like it.
Did you have any kind of even temporary signage, educational signage up during the construction process?
Not during construction, but right after construction, we did get the welcome to the wetlands, which is like that overview sign up,
Hmm.
which kind of gives a description of what the entire treatment system is doing. It just took us a little bit longer to get like the description of each pond or basin up and like the boardwalk signage. That just took a bit longer than I would have liked, but yeah, we got a good product in the end, so it was worth it.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Hmm.
Um, I would encourage folks if they have any final questions to feel free to put them into the Q&A or chat. Otherwise, we might be wrapping up here a little bit early, which is totally fine. I have a couple other questions that I can throw to you, Angela. Missy, just to check, did you have any questions? And it's okay if not. I know you already put in the iNaturalist question, but if you have any you'd like to bring up, feel free to chime in. Um, I know you talked a little bit about this already, but just as like a day-to-day or storm-to-storm comparison, how does the system perform under varying flow conditions from like its typical daily volumes to those larger storm events? Have you noticed any variability?
I don't think so. Not variability per se. I mean, you have to think previously in this general area of the park there was an outfall from Route 30, but it
Mhm.
was a grassed yard, so the water really kind of like spread out over it. We did get flooding in the lower end closer to the pond previously, but it wasn't nothing astronomical or really noticeable. So in terms of like heavy storms and whatnot, yes, we're bringing in more water and directing it, to this specific area, but I don't think we've had that real big storm where we're seeing like overtopping or anything. And we designed it that way purposefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did have a couple there. We do have options I mentioned earlier with with those drains where we can raise
Hmm.
and lower the water level. So like if we do, and we haven't had this come up yet either, but if we get into like a serious drought where we need to like turn off the pump station because we don't want to pull too much water out of the pond, we have the option where we can like, prep for that by raising the water level or dropping the water level to make sure, the aquatic vegetation has what it needs to. So, yeah.
If folks want to visit the wetland, is there anything they need to know? Any times of year you would especially recommend folks to come? Should they try to come when it's raining? When's the best time to visit the wetland?
I'd say in about a couple weeks, right? April, May, June, when it's in full bloom, it is just breathtaking. It's unbelievable how well the vegetation did out here. So our contractor was Flyaway Excavating. And that was one of their concerns in the beginning, right? Because I mentioned there were 10,000 plugs alone. Like that's a lot of vegetation. So they
Hmm.
actually brought in, I believe it was from one of their family farms, like agricultural, like watering solutions. Like it was very intense. There was a lot of hoses going around, a lot of water that was being used in the beginning. But it just like set the seed for everything to just take off. Like everything did so well. The seed mixes, the all the plug plantings, the shrubs, everything. The only thing I can say that didn't do as well was the live stakes, but they're filling in now too. But I mean, it just really took off, and it really truly is. When you're out there when things are in bloom, it's like wow, like it's so cool. So if you
Super
get the
cool.
chance, I'd say definitely late spring, early summer.
Do you do any volunteer engagement or opportunities for people to kind of like get their hands in there at all? Or is that something you're thinking about? Or is it a little too sort of technical to have the public engaged in
Definitely,
that way?
definitely something we're thinking about in the future. This last year and a half, 2 years or so, we've been really focused on like tours and education. But I think as vegetation matures and as the project matures, there'll definitely be some opportunities in the future for some volunteer work related to weeding and all
Hmm.
of that fun stuff. Never turn down help when it comes to weeding.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Angela. We've gone through all of my questions, and I don't see any more questions rolling into the Q&A, so I think that just means you blew everybody away with this
Oh,
incredible
thanks.
project. So we'll get wrapped up. This webinar, again, we've been recording it, so it will go onto our YouTube shortly. I encourage you all to check that out and to check out the BUBBAs page to get to know some of the other projects that entered in this last round. Our next BUBBAs contest will be in 2027, so crazily enough, you'll start seeing marketing for that relatively soon. Sounds insane to me that that we're coming up into 2027, not too far into the future. But thank you, everybody. This was our last webinar in our winter webinar series. But Missy, when is our next round of webinars in the next couple months? When should folks be looking out for those?
Well, we should be starting them in August is when people should the webinars will actually take place, but hopefully we'll be advertising them by July, June, July. So people will have a little time to kind of get it scheduled. But yes, the first one should be starting in August and through September.
Amazing. So exciting. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And thank you especially to Angela Brackbill. And we hope we will see you all again in our next webinar series.
Thank you for letting me show it off.
Can't wait to go visit.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.